Fairview's coffee has mysteriously gone missing. Mayhem ensues when strange, coffee-craving zombies plague the city. Detective Mickey Potatoes, an overworked public servant, uncovers why ordinary citizens are losing their minds and how to stop the coffee apocalypse. But it involves the mafia. And when you're dealing with mafia crime families, nothing is ever easy. The mafia controls everything in the city, including the police, including him. If he breaks the mafia, they will break him. So, the city is without coffee. The city is burning before his very eyes, but he's powerless. Detective Potatoes has the power to stop the coffee apocalypse, but if he does, he could lose everything.
The Immortal Mask, a 1970s superhero crime noir adventure that follows a retired soldier who is given a covenant interview with a death row inmate. What he learns from the interview thrusts him into Atlanta's shadowy underworld. He will have to utilize his military training to survive from being hunted for the information that could topple the most powerful ruling class in the city. This is not a pre-order or a crowdfunding campaign. Get your books now at Denali's.com.
"25 seconds to curtain, folks."
Your favorite podcast is Critical Blast.
And a hearty yo-ho for all my people out there watching in YouTube land. This here be Captain R.J. Carter with Critical Blast, sailing the high seas tonight. And yeah, that's just not going to work, is it? I'm sorry I inflicted that on all of you. Tonight, special kind of show. We'll talk about comic books some, because that's what we do. We'll talk about the various things. But we have guests, and we're going to educate you. We are going to talk about something cool, which would be pirates. Now, we're not talking about the people who live next door to you and have that really long cord they're running over and hooking into your cable box. No, not those kind of pirates. We're going to the OG pirates, the ones who, sailed the high seas in search of booty and buried treasure. And maybe we'll learn a few things along the way that we didn't know before. Please join me. Welcome to the show. First of all, Drunk3PO. Jay, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. Do appreciate you popping in. And Michael Oden, creator of The Embrace and currently running Judex, which we will talk about a little bit. Michael, how's tonight going for you?
It's going well. It's about to get even better. We're talking about some pirates. We're talking about some history. Two things I enjoy. Good deal.
Can't go wrong with that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of people watching here tonight. I mean, Woody's out there with yar. Yeah. Okay. If we put comments up, it's gonna be bad. But we'll go through them quickly. Captain Rex here says I need to put some more yar into it.
That's my man, Captain Rex. Thanks for being here, brother.
Mike Walters has popped in to like and share. Do appreciate that. Justice for Pooh, says Doug.
No,
B.
Doug. Doug Y. Doug B. I love you,
Chris
brother.
is looking so good, he says in that picture. He's concerned.
Yeah, all right. So he's talking about the bird because in Sea of Thieves, my bird is named Krista. So RJ also made me extra chubby in that picture too. So,
I did nothing of the sort. I just said, hey.
I don't mind. I can be a husky pirate.
and Pops is backstage pushing buttons, so I'm going to quit. So everybody, thank you for coming here to watch. I have no idea what I'm going to do other than moderate and keep them from fighting. But I
don't think that there's going to be much fighting. It's going to be
fighting.
Out. It's like no, so-and-so's the best pirate.
Yeah,
it's like,
no.
I mean,
none of that.
Okay.
No hitting below the peg leg.
Yeah, something like that.
So I guess my first question would be when did this age of piracy that we know of start? I mean, because if you think about what's a pirate, it's a thief. He's just on a boat.
Jay, do you want to take that? Because I think that most people associate it with the golden age of piracy. Piracy had been around for millennia prior to the golden age, but the stuff that everybody thinks of when it comes down to piracy is generally from the 15th, 16th century through the late 16th century.
So yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I think you asked the wrong first question, RJ. You asked the wrong first question.
That's what
the
Harlan
first
Ellison
question should have been is, why the heck do you two nerds love history? And what got you into history and the type of history to begin with? Because a lot of people are like, why? Why do you like history so much? What's wrong with you people? What's wrong with you? And see, every time he wants me to shut up, he highlights a message. So I see it total. Now, to answer the first question was, I'll do this real quickly. England was at war with Spain, and they wanted to figure out a way. They figured out a way how they could fight Spain on the high seas, and that would be hiring pirates, which they called privateers. So privateers, They were like, all right, look, you got a ship. Here's a letter of marque, which means you can go out and sink ships, but as long as they're not English ships, you can keep the treasure. Just wreak havoc. This is how we're going to win the war against Spain. And they called them privateers. So they had this letter that they could go to the Caribbean, to the different governors. When word got out, they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's he's attacking all these ships. He's like, don't worry. I got the letter of marque from England. I'm good. Then what happened was the war was over. And England was like, hey, we're not at war anymore. You guys got to stop what you're doing. And these privateers were like, well, we don't know what else to do.
Yeah, this is our job.
So they they became pirates, and when a couple of the big names like Benjamin Hornigoat and a few others started attacking English ships, it was like, all right, free for all. Let's just go. Whoever's available. That's the quick version.
Yeah, as I was saying, to expand on that a little bit, the war that he's talking about, and this was like the third outbreak of major piracy in this golden age, and it's the one that gets the most highlight because it's got the most notorious figures in it, right? So you have the Wars of Spanish Succession, which range over a very long period of time, and they eventually do come to a close. And part of the peace negotiation of this war is no more privateering. Both sides had kind of implemented it, but the English really, really promoted it on their end. So you had all of these, expert seafaring looters now unemployed. And so they go off and they start doing their own thing. I mean, Blackbeard's flagship is the Queen Anne's Revenge, and Queen Anne was the British queen during the last leg of that war. So that's the region he served under. And so that's what kind of inspires the whole golden age that most people think of, is that leftover these leftover privateers from the Wars of Spanish Succession.
One of the big events that happened was the Spanish treasure fleet crashed, and these like they were bringing all this treasure back to Spain, and like multiple ships. They caught a hurricane, some bad weather, and the ship crashed right outside, like around Florida Keys. Some of the gold is even found all the way up to South Carolina. And Spain didn't want anyone to, since the war was over, they were kind of like, no one take our gold, please. Just leave it there. It'll be okay. We're going to come collect it. If you take our gold, it's like an act of war. Well, all these ex-privateers were like, screw that. Like, there's like gold everywhere, like on the beach. So they collected a lot of it, and that was like bringing up a lot of tension. And that was, at least for some of the stuff that we read, that was that got a lot of other people involved in that golden age of piracy right there. There was like, my gosh, there's gold everywhere. They were selling, like basically one of the trade routes was they were picking up slaves, selling slaves. The ship would be filled with gold and goods, and then they would get captured by pirates, or they would stop the slave ships before they reached their port, and then they would sell the slaves for their money. Yeah. So, and steal the ship at the same time. So it was just, that was kind of like one of the big factors that got a lot of some of the celebrities that we know in the golden age of pirates, Sam Bellamy and Blackbeard, Hornigold, things like that. But the way they got that golden age to kind of fizz out was quite unique, because England didn't know. Yeah, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but England didn't know how to stop these pirates from like stealing all their ships. Like the big one was when Sam Bellamy got a hold of the Whydah, and that was, according to history, that was one of the biggest hauls of piracy ever. That ship had just sold, goods and slaves and services and all that stuff, and like everything, and it just was loaded with gold. And Sam Bellamy was able to capture that ship, and sadly, he didn't have it long, because that ship crashed in a tornado, and Sam and everybody else died. So only a few men left. But how England, that was the trigger moment for England, was like, we got to stop these pirates. What are we going to do? And someone had this great idea, was to offer them a pardon. Yeah. They literally said, all right, we'll offer them a pardon and let them keep everything that they have. And people thought that was a crazy idea, but it actually started to end the pirate, because people were like, I'm a pirate. If I get caught, I'm hung, I'm killed, I'm sentenced to death. And it's like, all right, look, if you stop doing it now, you could keep everything you have. You could come back to England. You could do whatever as a free man. You're done. Like, don't worry. And a lot of them took that offer. A lot, surprising. And the ones that didn't all ended pretty badly. So a lot of them took that offer. It's quite crazy how that pardon worked so well. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but yeah.
I do actually. So the king's pardon for the pirates was it is a very interesting tool, and I do agree with you. It was thing that in the long term really did work. But what I did find funny is like a good chunk of the big names that you mentioned would continuously take that pardon over and over and over again and abuse the shit out of it. Like Charles Vane took the pardon like 5 times before he was eventually captured and,
he was
and
hung,
put on trial and hanged. Like Charles Vane literally would be like, "Oh yeah, I take the pardon," or "Oh, I just took the pardon, guys. It's all good. We're all good," and then would just go and commit more acts of high sea piracy and be like, "Oh no, I take the pardon." Like every single time he'd be caught, and eventually they just wised up, like, "All right, you're getting a short stop. You're getting a short fall and a sudden stop, is what you're getting." So, but yeah, no, it did end up as Jay was saying, it did end up the psychological game of it.
Yeah.
Of, well, I could cut my losses. Like there's a way back. There's a way back to
that's right.
to this, and the pirates had even tried to establish their own colony in Nassau, where they had their own little pirate capital. And it's really funny because like the mindset of it is not dissimilar to what is eventually brought up here in the United States in the 1770s. Is this idea of having this autonomous nation independent from the old world that celebrated freedom, but it was ultimately doomed because everybody was out for themselves. They were all pirates. They're all thieves. No honor among them. Pretty accurate.
What? No code? Not even a guideline?
Okay.
Usually each pirate ship had their own set of rules and codes, and some of them, depending on who the captain was, some of it was, some crew were treated far better than others than on other ships. So, but yeah, they had like, and there was some kind of form of democracy among these thieves, where they were voted in and voted out, but they also held a high standard of punishment if you disobeyed their guidelines on the ship. I mean, the kind of torture, like I think
key hauling.
That that's horrible. I can't.
Yeah, it is.
But I also think leaving them deserted on like a
Marooning
sandbar
is also pretty bad as well. Yeah,
like there's no food there. It's like when they say leave deserted on an island, most of the time it was literally a sandbar. So there's like a couple inches of water there too, and who knows what would happen if a storm came by. And sometimes they would leave them with, like at least that's what the stories are, a gun with one bullet to end it all if the hunger got to you, So, that's just a slow, painful death. But
you mentioned keel hauling, and I don't think a lot of people know what that is. I'm not sure I've got it right, but I believe it's you're thrown off the front of the boat so that the boat runs over you while you're on.
You're not just thrown on, like, so effectively you're tied to
you're dragged under the barnacles,
and they put you under the boat, and then they have it so that way you're like they have the rope run under the ship first, and they bring it up the other side, and then they effectively drag you across the bottom of the ship. And it was very popular to do after you'd been out at sea for quite a bit of time without the ability to clean off the hull. So you're getting all the barnacles and all the stuff that's stuck to the bottom of the ship ripping your skin open as you pass along the hull. It's great. It's good times.
I'll say.
Surviving that, but.
It's like what sick, demented asshole thought of this?
Yeah, right. It's like the barnacles were like razor blades underneath that ship, and they're just dragging you underwater and holding you there until they feel like ripping you back up. Oh man,
I don't suppose many people survived
honestly,
it.
walking the plank is actually more of a Hollywood invention.
Yeah.
Not that's not really a
thing for
a
them.
pirate thing. So that was a Treasure Island Hollywood invention.
And
Doug,
100.
that's an interesting question. And I'm assuming this did. I mean, going after a bounty, did they have a plan, or did they just sail around and say, "There's one"?
What I think would probably happen is if you had two groups of pirates that were going after the same thing and they saw each other, what would effectively happen is whoever hoists the black first, you're looking at whose flag that is. And if it's somebody that's got a rep, you're going the fuck away. Because contrary to popular belief, most pirates during this age, they aren't in like frigate warships. They're in schooners. They're in like small little ships.
Little sloop stuff, yeah.
Like they are not in like 24 gun ships. Like Blackbeard was there's a reason why the guy has a reputation that he did. Like the guy has a Spanish galleon at the head of a fleet of like 15 to 30 ships.
Oh wow.
You know, like Blackbeard isn't just, I have my ship, it's the Queen Anne's Revenge. Edward Teague has 30 ships under his flag, and the banner holding flag was the Queen Anne's, which was a Spanish war galleon.
Yeah, that was the flagship, so that's why he was associated with that ship. If he was in a sloop, that's what he'd be at. And he said that's the flagship. Absolutely correct.
But like and that ship, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, that is like 40 gun.
It's a big boy.
Yeah,
it was one of the big boys. Yeah, they said that it was that ship was a little modified because it was taken from a previous pirate, and then that pirate who was done with piracy gave it over to Blackbeard. There's like 3 different stories on how he got that ship, so you just kind of wonder like which one is true. But it definitely was modified for speed. And so they might have taken out some of the guns for weight purposes to make it go faster. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. Most pirates had tons of ships with them. So it's like
I'm very proud of myself because I just looked this up. 40 gun.
Yeah, look at that.
Queen Anne's Revenge is armed with up to 40 guns. And I was like, yes! I knew my golden age of Buccaneers book would do me proud one day.
He said Buccaneers, folks. Buccaneers. Family show.
Yes, of course. Complete.
So, is there any? Are there treasure maps? Did they actually bury the gold somewhere and said we'll come back for it later, or did they just like keep it on the boat and spend it when they got to port?
Column A and column B.
Yeah, there wasn't too many pirates that buried their treasure. There were a few that hid them on different islands, but a lot of the times treasure wasn't gold. It was like sugar. Yeah. It was like that spices. I hate to keep bringing it.
Entirely depended on the cargo.
It was slaves too, and it's terrible that that's what it was, but that's what it was. Yeah. And so there were special ports that pirates could take all this stuff and exchange it for money. So it wasn't like they found a ship full with gold and then buried it in the sand and said, we'll come back later. A lot of the goods were just like sugars and spices. And then
even to that point, actually, one of the things that the Black Sails show did very well on is they would also trade in rare items for like effectively outside currency. In the show, I believe they use like these fancy black pearls. But like the idea is like most of these ships have manifests of what's on them, right? So there's an accountability of what exactly is there. If you're a pirate and some private like European merchant that's got that you've robbed his ship is now looking for his family heirloom that you've robbed him of, you're not going to want to hold on to that thing. You're going to want to get rid of it. And so you'd have a middleman service and a fencer that would effectively give you something that would equate a certain value that you would trade in at like a specific bank, and you'd get gold to distribute to your crew, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct. And there was also some of the governors in nearby towns, like in America, were
so
crooked.
corrupt.
And so they'd be like, hey, you steal stuff, bring it here. We could use it in this town, so they're getting all these goods, for a discounted price. So to help out, and how it hasn't changed much.
No,
when it comes to stuff like that.
So
like people pirate movies, you go buy them at the barbershop, it's like at a discounted rate. So,
Hey, you're going to that convention? Go see if you can find me, a DVD copy of Wicked from the Broadway musical. Not that anybody's done that. So we know they were thieves. We know that a lot of them were famous or infamous. Why do you think, and this leads into your personal interest in the subject, why do you think they became romanticized? I mean, they're thieves and killers.
It's the Robin Hood effect, is what I like to call it. These were people, and especially when you're talking about the Golden Age in particular. Like if you go back, pirates have existed in some form or another all the way back to antiquity. Like the Vikings, pirates. That's what they are. They've just got a fancy name. There's a king of Pontus, Mithridates VI Eupator, who uses Cilician pirates to harass the Romans during his Mithridatic wars, and he's effectively the first pirate lord. Like at the end of the day, though, the reason why we have this romanticism of the Golden Age of piracy is, in my personal opinion, three major reasons. One, you have what I call the Robin Hood effect, which is you have these people that are going against the man and sticking it to him, and are, like in certain tales, redistributing the wealth to the lower class, and et cetera, et cetera. But then you also have the proximity to the Enlightenment as well. This is right now during this period, you are having the Enlightenment going on in France, and it's spreading throughout Europe, and you're having all of these conversations on the rights of man and the sovereign and everything like that. And so there's a lot of empathy to a group of people who were effectively screwed over and left jobless by their government, completely disavowed, because that was part of the treaty. Not only were these guys out of a job, the British Crown disavowed them, and that effectively put targets on all of their backs. That's cool. I didn't know that.
JR is a fount of knowledge when he shows up in the chat, which is frequently.
I knew that the Pope had divided the New World between Portugal and Spain in terms of like the Ile de Española, Mexico, and South America. But anyways, yeah, like those are the major reasons, I would say, is proximity to the Enlightenment and the Robin Hood effect.
I'll take it a step further. William Kidd, a famous pirate whose name went all through England, who was hung in England in front of a large sum of people. There was a time where a lot of people they hated being under the rule of a king. And the fact that you have these people like literally putting their middle fingers up, I don't care about no king. What's he going to do to me? I'm going to live, adventurous life. Especially with the younger people, like that type of rebellion, was very attractive. So a lot of these younger people like looked at that, such as even they talked about that with Charles Vane, that Charles Vane actually saw the hanging of William Kidd, and it just kind of like this is the kind of freedom I want. I don't want to be under a king. I want that lure of freedom. So that could have been part of it as well. So I think, and you know how just like stories spread, like in every day, like things get bigger than who they are. Like the stories of these pirates living an adventurous life, having women, having gold, having freedom. not having to listen to anybody. Hey, you could work 2 years on a pirate ship and make enough to live the rest of your life. I mean, especially in a time where, you know, people weren't doing too good. There was a massive divide between the rich and the poor.
Yeah.
So it's like the poor were uneducated, couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't do much of anything, lived on the streets. It was awful. The rich lived in these pompous houses. They had all the money, you know, they had access to the king. They were fat and happy, and it was a massive divide. So you have these poor people that are like, are you telling me I can get on a ship for a few years and then the rest of my life I wouldn't have to like work for scraps or slop? Then yeah, sign me up. Where do I go? That's what I'm doing.
And to add on to Jay's point, that's a fantastic point. And that was the third thing that I forgot, was at this point in time in this old world dynamic, there's a reason why you have people who have last names that sound like an occupation, like barber,
yes,
carpenter, stuff like that, is because that was their last name, was their family trade. And when you were born into that trade, that's what you were going to do. And the notion and the romanticism of piracy on the seven seas during this period, from privateering to the actual act of piracy that comes afterwards, it's a chance to change your stars. And this is something that you will hear it's an expression you hear in a lot of things. I think, like, most notably, it first appears in like Chaucer's and Geoffrey Chaucer, where, you know, he's talking about like the whole thing of elevating above one's station, going and starting off as a peasant and ending up a knight, right? You know, like that's the idea. And so piracy became this tangible way to change one's stars, to go beyond that. And so, like, and again, that feeds back to the Robin Hood elements, and it plays into the fact that you've got the Enlightenments going on right across the channel and from England into France, and France is spreading this throughout all of Europe. And like,
I 100%. And then, you know, we'll never know actually the truth why some signed up. Some might just had nothing better to do.
Yeah, that's like, it's like, what else were you going to do? It like, you know, it's the same thing as, you know, for a while when they were looking at sending people to the colonies, it became a whole thing of, at this point in time, Queen Elizabeth had made it capital punishment for like any minor crime in the city of London. And so effectively you've stolen a loaf of bread, you can either be executed or we send you to America.
Yeah.
And pretty much either one was seen as a death sentence.
Yeah.
But like, that's how you got the penal colonies in Georgia and what have you. So like, it wouldn't surprise me if you had privateers recruiting from these low levels. And then of course, once you sign up with the privateers, War of Spanish Succession's over. I mean, what are you going to do? You've been disavowed by the crown. You don't have a job. You're going to go back to stealing in the streets when you've been living it up on the seven seas with your captain for the past 5-10 years? Nah, screw that. You're going to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. I had a thought, now I lost it, but I'm going to ask a different question. Anne Bonny, real or not?
Real. Very
100%
real.
100% real.
So a female pirate in the golden age of piracy.
Her and Mary Read. So Mary. So in order to really tell the story of Anne Bonny, you have to. There are two other pirates that you have to acknowledge: Mary Read and Jack Rackham.
Yeah, Calico Jack.
So during this golden age of piracy period, Anne Bonny starts off, and she's effectively a tavern wench, right? Like she's hanging out at a bar in Nassau, handing out drinks to pirates, and at some point in this, she catches the eye of Calico Jack, who
you know what? You know how she got there?
How?
So her father had an affair and got the person that he was sleeping with pregnant,
Nice.
And because of the in Ireland, and because like back in those days, religious laws were extremely strict. You know, you can't have a child out of wedlock. If you things like that, you were shunned from society. So she was kind of shunned from society because the dad tried to dress her up as a boy and say, no, this is just my work apprentice. And then when the story got out, there's actually a girl and it happened through an affair. He just shunned her from society and sent her on a boat, and off to the Caribbean she went.
It's funny because that's similar to what Mary Read goes around and pretends to be the kid of William Kidd.
Yeah.
For the beginning of her career. She dresses up as a boy.
Well, they didn't want women on those ships, man. Like,
no,
that
it was
like
it was considered bad luck.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, Anne Bonny is the winner of the golden age of piracy. She is probably one of the most prolific pirates that gets immediate association because of her career with Jack and Mary. But she's the only one of them to survive, and she lives. And if this is to be believed, she lives until she's like 80 years old. She goes back to Ireland, uses what money she's gained through all of this, buys herself a little plot of land, and just lives there the rest of her life. Dies peacefully in her bed at 80.
A happy ending.
Now there is a rumor that she and she could have lied when they caught Calico Jack Rackham. They caught
them all.
Mary Read and Bonnie, and they were all sentenced to be executed, but they wouldn't execute a woman because she said she was pregnant. Yeah. So they said that she was pregnant. So they released her. They kicked her off the island. So some people said that she could have lied, like it, whatever it was. And then she kind of
unknown what happened.
She kind of spit on Jack Rackham a little bit, like if you fought like a man, dude, we wouldn't be here.
It's one of the most savage burns in history, where you would have
fought like a man, you wouldn't have died like a dog, something like that.
She watches him going off to the gallows, and he's like begging for her help, and she just goes, "If you had fought like a man when we were captured, you wouldn't be dying like a dog today."
Yeah.
Like, holy shit. Mic drop. No love lost.
But then you're right. After that, she kind of disappeared. A lot of people said that she went to Ireland and raised a son, and they just lived on the land and disappeared. Yeah. Or she went back, had the son in Cuba, and left the son there, and then went back to Ireland alone. There's a lot of rumors about that, because essentially she was kind of like I don't know if she was on the run, but she probably was so close to being caught and hung. She was like, I just want to.
Yeah, she probably just went into obscure, and it was the smart thing. Like she went away with a full deck of cards. She did really well. She's probably like, and I would consider her.
She might have been the one that buried treasure somewhere, and we never knew, because she was a woman, and she was like, "I'll be right back. I got to go to this island real quick. Women stuff." And so the men just let her go.
pretty much.
I'll be back in 7 days.
Yeah. It's women stuff.
Like,
you don't want to know. Stay away. So one of those things. So you never know. Her story is her story would make a great film if someone did it right.
All of them. There's so much great. Imagine if somebody did a. Benjamin Hornigold, you've mentioned a good deal. He's got a great story.
Yeah,
Charles Vane, he's got a great story. Yeah. All of these guys do. I mean, Francis Drake, they've technically already done a film on Francis Drake. But if you went into Francis Drake, literally the grandfather of all piracy for the Golden Age. Yes, he was Queen Elizabeth's privateer, but Francis Drake was the idol, the icon to all of these guys. Him and William Kidd pretty much inspired most of these guys to do what they did. There's so much rich storytelling in the history of piracy, and it's a shame that it gets treated like a parody.
It is true. And speaking on women, outside of the golden age of piracy is actually a woman. Madame Chin was the most successful pirate in the history of pirates, who had a massive fleet, who had the government over there in China basically begging her, like, hey, we don't want to bother you, do whatever you want. And she retired, opened up a gambling brothel where she lived out the rest of her life. As a woman.
You can't go wrong.
Yeah. There's your diversity, Hollywood.
Oh, dude, don't even get me. Oh,
you wouldn't have to change anything. It's just right there.
In the history alone, it just kills me. Like I'm a huge classical antiquities guy, so it's like I go back and I find stuff like all the time, and I'm just like, man, people are constantly complaining that there isn't enough diversity and stuff, but like I literally just read like 300 pages of Arian that talks about like a female warrior queen that kills Cyrus the Great. And you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
And listen,
there's
if they wanted
that's existed.
Exactly. And if they wanted to do a black pirate, the story of Black Caesar is incredible. Whether like some people debate that back and forth. Basically, some historians tell this story that he was captured, put on a slave ship. They hit like a bad storm. He was able to escape. They took over the ship. He went off onto some island. He was picked up by a pirate along with some other slaves, and then eventually became number 2 in charge next to Blackbeard. It was Blackbeard's number 2. And he was extremely wealthy, that he had his own, like, according to the story, he had his own little island, you know, where he had stuff there, you know, during their downtime. But eventually he lost his life when Blackbeard was killed in that last siege. But it's an incredible that story right there. I mean, it's like it's an incredible story as well. That you know, they wanted to do diversity. There you go.
So, are there any is there any still undiscovered but known to have existed pirate treasure?
Oh, probably I think it's all around. Like sometimes it's a funny story. Like over in the Florida Keys, some in South Carolina, and even all the way up in Massachusetts, every now and then, some lucky soul is walking along the beach and steps on sand. Like, what is this big shiny thing there? And it just like it makes the news that he's found like a gold doubloon. So you know, it's like however it got there, I have no idea. But those were where some of the more famous wrecks were, and so, you know.
So what I would say is I don't think that calling them like a buried treasure would be accurate. You're not going to find like some hoard trove. But what I would definitely say is they're absolutely like undiscovered shipwrecks where pirates were trying 100%. To come in and their ships just got wrecked and they lost a treasure off the coast somewhere. And so that's why like you know, Savannah, Georgia is like it finds this stuff all the damn time because Savannah was a very popular hub. Like Blackbeard went there a whole bunch of those guys would go through the southern colonies of the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida because they're mainly operating in the Caribbean. And so they would like where they'd be dealing with the Spanish, and then they would go back up north to more English friendly territory where they would have people they knew in those colonies that would, you know, give them asylum. And that's in fact how Blackbeard ends up getting undone, is effectively the governor of South Carolina has had enough of his shit.
Are you allowed to share screens?
Yeah.
RJ, do you have that power here?
I have that power. I'm going to change the layout so that we can.
This is from the Pirate Treasure Museum that I just visited not too long ago in St. Augustine. The guy that owns this used to be the owner of the Philadelphia 76ers. And in this museum, and he has gazillions of dollars, and he goes all over the world to buy official pirate relics for this museum. And according to this museum, this is the world's only surviving pirate treasure chest left in the world. Now other museums have pieces, you know, different things like that, or they've been discovered under the water, you know, so there's a lot of corrosion. but this is basically what it looked like. And the lock on this thing is like, it's massive. They were talking about how there was like some of the keys that they used. You had to turn it like only certain people knew how to turn it like 6 times to the right and then back 4 times to the left to just line that stuff up to open it. But that's that. You could see all the design way up here at the top, you know, and then the key would go in there. So it was quite a unique looking piece that they had. And I had more pictures, but I didn't post them, but of the key and how it worked for some of these chests. They purposely made it a funny lock, so only certain people knew. And according to this museum as well, they were saying that some of these chests were built that if you did it wrong, you couldn't open them. Like you literally had to smash them up if you wanted to get them open. So
you screwed up the lock, you screwed it up for good.
Pretty much, and then you just find a giant cliff and just drop it off and hope that it smashes open
or shoot it.
Yeah, it's pretty it's pretty awesome. They said this belonged to Pirate Thomas II. So
he's one I haven't heard of.
Cool.
Thomas II, yeah, he was a famous one as well. So
I keep thinking I'm going to ask about Pirates of the Caribbean, but I know that there's nothing in that at all that borrows from pirate lore other than the fact that pirates existed.
I mean, they have the code handed down by Bartholomew Roberts, who is a real pirate.
Yeah,
that's about it.
Is it really a code though, or?
Oh my god,
that's my favorite line of all the films. It's just like it's more of a guideline. But you know, piracy. We talked about how it was formed by the British Empire. It did help form the government of the United States in certain documents. You know, you have this the famous online argument when it comes to America and Christianity and, you know, what's the major dominant religion in the country. And they always go back to that Thomas Jefferson, the United States being in no way a Christian nation. And that comes from a treaty that he basically wrote with the Moorish pirates saying, hey, stop hitting our ships. We're not a Christian nation. We have a lot of Christians in it, but yeah, it's not. We don't, you know, run. Are
you talking about the piracy from Tripoli?
Yeah, the Tripoli pirates.
And then I was surprised you went that route and not Jean Lafitte is a major component to the Battle of New Orleans in the War of 1812. And point of fact, Andrew Jackson would not have won that battle without Jean Lafitte.
Yeah, he was a pirate that had that place on lock. So they said that his port that he was kind of covering had sometimes you would see almost 1,500 pirate ships docked in there. Yeah. So just so people understand. I see you, Captain Erect. I see everything you're saying. Yeah, Madam Chen was in Pirates of the Caribbean. She was a real pirate. But that when you learn. Right now, I'm on this kick of like pirate ports. Like that was like the latest video I released on the History Channel, and when they talk about, yeah, this port had about 2,000 pirate ships at its port, and this and see we're the famous pirates in the Golden Age. You're talking maybe 20, 25, but there were thousands, man, that had that were out there just trying to. Figure it out. So it's just like anything in life. You have the big boys up here, and then you have like we were talking about earlier, Blackbeard had his flagship, Queen Mary's Revenge, and then he had like 20 other ships. They were all part of the whole thing. So if one of the big boys were coming into dock, he ain't coming in with a ship. He's coming in with like an army. Yeah. It's like make way.
The big guy, the big captains were not just, oh, I've got my ship. It's no, they're in charge of a fleet. They've got probably about 30 ships at least. And they are all varying in different sizes. A good majority of them would be like schooners. But like you'd have some frigates and everything in there as well. But like that's why Blackbeard is as unique as he is, and it's why he got the rep that he did, is because he was able to do all of this crazy stuff and work his way up to having a man of war style vessel that most pirates couldn't dream of getting a hold of.
So most of our pirate imagery comes from Hollywood movies and such. I'm guessing the reason we don't know that they had these armadas all the time was because Hollywood didn't have the budget to do more than one pirate ship.
There's that, but I think it's also the romantic. It goes back into playing in the romanticism. As I said, there's a lot of the Robin Hood effect when it comes down to piracy, and Robin Hood wouldn't be nearly as cool and cunning if the merry men were like 600 strong, right? It's always depicted as, oh, he's got like a ragtag group of like 10 to 20 people, and it's like, oh yeah, and they're fighting the authority and blah 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 blah. It's the same thing with pirates. It's like, oh yes, well, we want to focus on just the one ship, you know. But and I do think budget plays into it, but I think that it's also the romantic imagery of one ship, one crew against the world, and
100%.
That plays into it as well.
I totally agree. And he's right. Most pirates had these little sloops, and they just were forgotten about. They were hanging. There was I think in that museum they were talking about, there was one day they hung almost 300 people accused of piracy, in one of these towns. So they just were hanging people all day long.
Speaking of failed pirates, Jay, what is your opinion on Stede Bonnet?
The gentleman pirate?
Yeah.
Is that his nickname, right?
Yeah, it is. Blackbeard's understudy who was too nice.
Yeah.
And that's not even an exaggeration. He literally went on to the Queen Anne's Revenge, did a tour with Blackbeard, and was effectively studying Blackbeard to how to become a pirate captain. And this guy literally went off to go on to do his own crew, got mutinied 3 times, and eventually got caught by English court. And the English court felt bad sentencing him to death because he was so polite. He's known as the gentleman pirate. He's great.
I mean, I don't think any of these guys were, if they've made it into the history books and we're talking about them, I will consider it a win.
That's fair.
Knowing that there was hundreds of other pirates that we don't even know their name, so I guess I'll consider that a win. But out of all the famous ones, yeah, it's quite a funny story. That's for sure.
I just had to pop in here and say everything I know about pirates I learned from that umbrella guy.
had to watch too much of that. Yes. So
that's pretty good.
We're coming up on the end of the hour here. Was there anything about piracy or the Golden Age of Pirates that you came into the show saying, okay, at some point I'm going to talk about this, and I didn't go in that direction?
I mean, I wasn't going to talk about the Golden Age of Pirates. I was going to jokingly steer it towards antiquity because I make everything Rome. But yes. I was going to talk about the Mithridatic Wars and Mithridates, but that's a whole other video, dude. It literally waged 3 wars against Republican Rome with he held a land campaign in the eastern provinces, but then he would damage Roman supply lines.
Did they even use the term pirate back then, though?
Yes. No, their Arian specifically calls them pirates.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Now I have to figure out what the derivation of the word is.
So he calls them pirates and looters.
Yeah, it's basically thieves. Yeah.
They were
Perotta.
The Cilician pirates were no joke. They captured Julius Caesar when he was a young man. And then Julius Caesar made a promise to him. He crucified them, and then he became their friends. And then when they let him go, he raised up an army, and he committed to that promise, and he crucified them.
Sea robbers.
Yeah, it comes from the Latin Perotta. So that's cool. And I took 3 years of Latin, and I didn't come across that word. So
a dead language, man.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. A dead language. Look at that.
Oh, Gallia est omnes in partem tres.
Look at that.
You're just throwing little expressions out. That's hardly a fluency.
True. But you have heard of it.
I have.
That's like me going, yeah, I know Latin. Moritore te salutamus.
Oh, yeah, sure. Gustibus non est disputandum. Sic transit gloria mundi, all that good stuff. Agricola es puella. That's the first one you're going to learn.
Oh.
So as we head out, folks, be aware that there are links below this video. If you want to get regular doses of the history of pirates, hit Drunk3PO's History of Pirates channel. The link is below, as is the link to his standard channel, Drunk3PO. So hit that up. There's also a link to Michael's channel where you can get into Roman history if that's your particular jam.
Bored for an hour, and it'll be great.
Dude, I love Roman history. That was Roman history was my master's in college.
Oh, we got a
whole new show.
Jay,
I wrote my thesis paper was on the aqueduct system in Rome.
Okay, Jay, you're
probably the most boring paper anyone could ever read on how Rome was like the first to basically have a toilet system that worked. So like
Jay, we're gonna have you on when in Rome. We're gonna have no viewers. But
I
we're
don't
gonna
care.
have you on when in Rome. Well, I host the show with my buddy Matt Krotz, who writes the indie book Kyrie, which all takes place during the 3rd century crisis. And then I'm a huge Roman and Greek antiquities buff.
Y'all would destroy. Now it's been a while. But
that doesn't matter. Chime in.
I was
it's
fascinated
with stupid videos, Jay. You'll be fine.
I love it though. I'd probably just sit back and listen because to me, it was like it's fascinating. Like people don't even realize that like the chariot tires are what they used to build trains. It's like the same measurements, like all the stuff that Rome invented that has impacted the world even today. It's like it's quite. It's very fascinating to me.
Jay, you've made a lifelong friend. Rome exists in our hearts.
I was fascinated with the aqueduct system, man. I was like, let me write about
it's
how the underground pipe system worked and the water, hot water, cold water, and like how they were. It was crazy.
The amount of things the Romans and Greeks figured out that we lost because of idiots breaks my heart. Like literally, I think it was like in 2010.
The Library of Alexandria burned, and like we lost all that knowledge. It's like,
well, it's like they found this like old Greek blueprint in like 2010 for like an automobile adjacent machine that dates back to like Ptolemaic era Greece, and I'm like, the fuck, like you just go, how?
We get people in the chat saying just sub to your channel. That's Doug B. Doug B and Captain Wrecked are two of they are like some of the greatest encouragers. Everybody needs a Doug B and a Captain Wrecked by their side. They are amazing. They have always encouraged me through the good times and bad times and supported every silly project I have ever thrown out. And they're amazing. So the fact that they sub to your channel, get ready. Good stuff, man.
I appreciate it. And Captain Rex said he wrote an essay debunking the plot of Rome season 2 compared to history. Look, man, it wasn't historically accurate. They sped through a lot of the timeline. I do not blame that on the writers. They literally had a 5-season plan and were told when they started season 2, this is it.
Yeah.
And so they were like, well, people are going to be pissed if we don't get to the the final fight between freaking Antony and Octavian that we've been building up. So like,
all right. So here's what we're gonna do. Oden. Here's what we're gonna do. Give me RJ knows how to get in contact with me probably better than most. Give me a Roman topic that you would love to talk about for an hour, so I could brush up maybe like the time period with the different Caesars and maybe battles and things like that, while I look into the architect, like of the time. But you got to give me some time because I'm kind of busy.
You know what we'll do? This is perfect. We'll talk about, since you're into the infrastructure and everything, there is no better topic to discuss than the reinvention of Rome by Augustus and Agrippa. I came to a city of brick and left it one of marble, and that's what we'll call the freaking episode 2.
Well, it's crazy because people go there year after year to study the architect, and they try to figure out how they built these places with the tools that they had at the time and how they're still standing without any issue.
The Pantheon has no
RJ's lost control, and now he's just like, letting us talk.
I was just trying to get you out in time.
People would not figure out how to make a dome building again until the late Renaissance.
Isn't that crazy? That's freaking nuts, man.
It's absurd. But yeah, it's an impressive thing. I mean, I still get blown away by the fact that they were able to like build roads that they still are used today, and they don't need to be repaired. Like you aren't seeing the Italian government going, "All right, we got to go patch up these roads. We got to go do construction." It's like, nah, man, the Via Flaminia has been working just fucking fine since
Well, that was the beautiful thing about. Well, if there was I say beautiful, but Rome was very violent. But when they captured,
it was justified violence, right?
When they captured like different towns and like cities and stuff like that, when they were conquering, they always sought out the smartest people in the bunch, and they literally like went to keep them alive. Like Archimedes, don't kill Archimedes. We not him alive. He's smart. That man can invent anything. So when we take over, you find him. But sadly, he was killed in that battle. But it was like they would look for the smartest people and say, "Hey, look, we'll spare your life. Come and work with these other guys, and let's do something."
Could you imagine if we still had any of Archimedes's freaking widgets that he uses during the freaking siege of Syracuse? Like, literally, like people watch Dial of Destiny and we're like, "Oh, that's a bunch of BS." Like, nah, that's what the primary sources actually say. That he created a claw machine that would rip Roman ships out of the sea, and he created a dial a lens that refracted light just at the right angle, so that it would set shit on fire.
Yeah,
like no words.
He had lasers and a giant claw.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's insane.
But it is insane, and that's what that's what people don't understand. Like when you think of Rome, you think, I actually studied Rome because, I try to line up a lot of the stories up with the Bible. Like when you see some of the things as far as when Jesus and others were talking about the different laws and stuff. Like a lot of people don't understand. Like once you put those laws in with these historic texts and understand exactly what they were talking about and who, it just makes things a little more alive and real on all fronts of the aspects. So studying Rome and Roman history and the way they did government and it's so fascinating. It's just that, and like I said, once I fell in love with the aqueduct system, I'm like telling people, I'm like, man, they had like toilets and bathtubs, man, that worked. And they're like, yeah, Jake, okay. I'm like, don't you find that cool? Because all of a sudden, the world didn't have it for a while.
We lost,
and then it came back.
Centuries. These guys had this shit figured out, and then they collapse.
Yeah,
and everything goes away. Now, it's not to the degree that Renaissance writers like to put out and everything like that. There was still culture and Roman influence throughout the continent, even up in Britain, during what Renaissance likes to picture as the Dark Ages. But you lose so much stuff because of all sorts of silly shit. Yeah. And it just makes you want to it just makes you go nuts, man. It's really insane.
Imagine what they'll say about us about the same thing in 1,000 years.
I don't even want to think about that.
All right, we'll set that up.
man,
we gotta
I'm
set
all
that up
down.
to like near the end of like. So give me like September. I gotta get my August.
I got you.
booked.
We'll get
But
you. We'll get
give
you
me
on.
a topic and a time period so I could brush up a little bit, so I don't completely walk in like Julius
man.
Caesar.
Julius Caesar. He built 2 walls at Elysia, right? Like that's how it went.
Yeah, I saw Gladiator. It was exactly like Gladiator.
I would throttle you on stream. I'd be like, "No, Jay,
I know.
we're not."
He had a battle with Pompey, and their stands went
I
at
know.
it. And,
I saw the movie 300. Wasn't that Rome?
I don't know what the deal is. I don't know what the deal is, but Rocky been sitting here listening to, like, for 5 minutes, just sitting here listening to everything you guys are saying. Like,
he's a reincarnated.
usually he'll talk
reincarnated
and
Roman
walk
soldier.
away, right? Usually he'll say something and then leave, but he's just sitting here listening to you guys.
I have that
remember,
effect
Rocky,
on animals. My
Belisarius is the last Roman general, and don't let anybody tell you different. Belisarius
Do you
was
like
the
Roman
last
stuff?
true Roman.
Well,
Remember that.
moving from Rome to Gaul.
I guess France is a bit different, but yes, moving to Paris. This is my book.
And the link is also below.
Yes, link is also below. So this is my latest comic. If you like V for Vendetta, The Shadow, an old school pulp, this is the book for you.
As soon as you started talking about the book, he was out. I don't know why. As soon as you quit talking about Rome, he left, man. I'm just saying.
Fair enough. But anyways, so we took this old silent film character from 1916, Judex, who was originally this kind of Edmond Dante's Count of Monte Cristo revenge story. And I turned him into this defender of Parisian culture during the Nazi occupation in the 40s. So I ended up teaming up with some good friends, Aaron Neff and Frequency Girl at the Global Frequency Studios. They had done Mavericks about a year and a half ago. Fantastic book. And we came together. They became my production partner and creative partners. They helped subsidize the art and creative process, as well as help me with the script and everything. And we came up with one hell of a story. I found this artist, Fabrizio Ugolini, who does this beautiful black and white style that makes you feel like you're watching an old black and white movie. And we've created a campaign that not only I think people are going to enjoy the book, it has some of the best value in indie comics, in my opinion. Like literally when we were creating the perks for the campaigns, Neff would be like, "You want to do this?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, can we do that?" And he was like, "Yeah, you can do it."
Yeah, they're selling the gun, people.
Yeah, we've got a replica of his gun, the Widow, which is a beautiful so. The gun is made from the blade of the guillotine. From the French Revolution.
I'm getting one right now. Not a gun. I don't know if I have 500, but I'm ordering a book right now. So,
I mean, I'm not going to stop you from getting the tool of justice. But so a cool bit of things about the gun is, as I said, it's made from the blade of the guillotine. But it's also a character in and of its own right. In Judex's hand, the Widow will only ever possess as much ammunition as needed for justice to be served. And so, like, that's the whole thing with Judex is he's fighting the Nazis, but Judex is Latin for judge. And so his role in all this is he's not just fighting these oppressors, he's judging his people for their action or inaction in the face of oppression. And what you get is this incredibly nuanced morality tale, and it's elevated and heightened by this black and white art. And we have just a fantastic campaign for you guys. We even have a crossover story with Von Klaus's Black Terror reboot that he did. And we've got his art team from that doing it. And he wrote a 12-page story with Judex and Black Terror fighting a German warlock who resurrects a coven of Parisian sexy vampires. Like, you can't go wrong.
Look at that beautiful cosplay mask. That's insane. And again, you can get a copy of the Widow. You can get the cape. You can actually do the entire cosplay kit.
There's only one more of those left. But and obviously any and all support is appreciated. Indiegogo has deemed it fit to shadow ban us, so that's been fun. But we appreciate all the support that we have gotten so far. It's been a blast. This is going to be a really great book. It's already pretty much Fabrizio sent in the roughs of the final pages for edit and review about 2-3 weeks ago. We sent in our revisions, and I believe he's getting to work at those here in the next week.
All right. Well, it should remind you of the Shadow Captain Rex, because guess what? The guy who created the Shadow based him off of Judex.
Allegedly. I need to correct myself, because all this hits me up every single time. So this original silent film was done in 1916, and Walter B. Gibson had seen it, and there is a lot of people that believe that Gibson was at least in part inspired by the character, with the character's use of hypnotism and his original design being, having that slouch cap and a black cloak. If you look at the traditional silent film Judex, you can absolutely see the inspiration.
Plus, the first chapter of the silent film was called That Mysterious Shadow.
Yes. And so would make a great animated series. Just saying, I don't disagree. That is way outside my capabilities at this current time, but I would love to get there.
Somewhere Neff is going, animated series? Yeah, we can do that.
No, we've talked. That's years down the line. Right now, just book.
All right, guys.
You never know, man. Anybody could be watching. You never know.
Yeah, absolutely. You might get a call after the show, say, hey, you know what I've got? A studio.
Captain Wrecked, I'll die on that hill with you. And in fact, I'll one-up you. Not only is the 90s Shadow movie not terrible, the opening bridge sequence is to date the best entrance of a hero in any film ever. Fight me.
I liked the Shadow. I had no problem with it at all. Guys, I know you got places to get. I kept you longer than I intended to. I'm sorry about that.
Good conversation, man. Good conversation.
All right. Thanks for coming on. Always appreciate it. Folks in the chat, thank you for being here. We don't have a show without you. We're just a podcast falling in the woods otherwise. So we're glad that you're here. And as always, while you were here, we just hope you had a blast. Good night, everybody.
Where's my big...